The police replayed the highway footage 6 times. Every time, our SUV appeared, the empty road appeared, the truck that passed us at exactly 2:11 in the morning appeared, even the man who chased our car for nearly half a mile, he was there. But the woman all 5 of us stopped to talk to, the woman who leaned against my passenger window, the woman who looked me in the eyes and whispered, "Whatever happens, don't stop for the man ahead." She wasn't there, not in a single frame. The detective paused the footage. He turned his monitor toward us. Then he asked a question that nobody in that room could answer. If she never appeared on any camera, who warned you, even now? Almost 3 years later, I still don't know, and I don't think I ever will. My name is Ryan. Everything I'm about to tell you happened during what was supposed to be the best weekend of our lives. There were 5 of us, me, my younger brother Mason, my best friend Tyler, his girlfriend Chloe, and Noah, the only one who had driven this route before. It was the first weekend of summer. No responsibilities, no work, no deadlines, just one old SUV, 5 friends, and a 3-day road trip across the state. We left just before sunset. Music blasted through the speakers. Windows rolled down, everyone talking over each other. For the first few hours, it felt like every road trip you've ever been on. We stopped for food, argued over playlists, made stupid jokes, took pictures we'd probably never look at again. Around midnight, we pulled into a small gas station somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It was the only building for miles. One pump worked. Half the lights outside were burned out. The place looked abandoned. Inside, an elderly man sat behind the counter reading a newspaper. He didn't even look up when we walked in. Tyler grabbed snacks. Mason went to the drinks cooler. I paid for the fuel as I handed the old man my card. He glanced toward the windshield. "You kids heading east?" "Yeah," he nodded slowly. "You taking Route 16? Noah answered before I could. "It saves almost 40 minutes. The old man finally looked directly at us. His expression changed. "I'd take the long way." Tyler laughed. "That road really that bad?" The old man ignored the joke. Instead, he asked something strange. "How many of you are traveling?" I smiled. 5. He stayed quiet for a moment, then he handed back my card. "Good." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Make sure only 5 of you leave." The entire store went silent. Nobody knew how to respond. Tyler chuckled awkwardly. "Guess we've got ourselves a comedian." The old man didn't smile. He simply returned to his newspaper. As we walked back outside, Mason looked over his shoulder. "That guy was weird." Noah shrugged. "Small town people love making up stories." We got back into the SUV. The gas station disappeared behind us. 10 minutes later, our GPS suddenly rerouted. "Traffic ahead. Estimated delay, 58 minutes. Tyler groaned. "Forget that." Noah zoomed out on the map. "There it is, Route 16. A narrow highway cutting straight through the mountains, almost completely empty." We voted 5 against 0. Nobody wanted to waste another hour. The moment we turned onto Route 16, everything changed. The road became strangely quiet. No other cars, no houses, no gas stations, no streetlights, only endless forest on both sides. Even the music somehow felt too loud. Chloe turned the volume down. "I don't know why. This road feels wrong." Nobody answered, because we'd all started thinking the same thing. The pavement looked newer than the roads leading to it, yet the guardrails were rusted. Road signs leaned at odd angles. Some had bullet holes. Others looked like they'd been ripped apart years ago. Then we passed the first abandoned vehicle, an old pickup truck parked neatly on the shoulder. Driver's door open, nobody inside. Tyler looked back through the rear window. "Probably broke down." Noah nodded. "Yeah." But his voice didn't sound convinced. A few miles later, another vehicle, an SUV, hazard light still flashing. Empty, then another, this time a motorcycle lying on its side, helmet still resting beside it. No rider, no skid marks, nothing. Chloe finally spoke. "Has anyone noticed? We haven't passed a single person." She was right. Nearly 30 minutes on that highway, and not one moving vehicle, not one. My phone buzzed. I looked down. No signal. Everyone checked theirs. Nothing. No service. No GPS. Just a tiny message at the top of every screen. Emergency calls only. Noah laughed nervously. Guess we're officially in the middle of nowhere. Then, the radio cut out, not gradually, instantly. The music vanished, only static remained. Tyler reached forward. Try another station. Noah did. Nothing, every frequency, static. Then, for less than a second, a woman's voice came through the speakers. Don't stop. The signal disappeared. The SUV fell completely silent. Mason leaned forward. Did anyone else hear that? Nobody answered. Because everyone had. Noah tried convincing us it was interference. A distant station, bad reception. It sounded reasonable until Chloe quietly pointed ahead. There, about 200 yards in front of us, someone was standing beside the road, a young woman, barefoot, wearing an old white dress stained with dirt. Her long dark hair moved gently in the night breeze. She wasn't waving, she wasn't crying, she wasn't trying to flag us down. She simply stood there, looking directly at our approaching headlights. Then, she slowly raised one hand, not toward us, toward the forest behind her, and whispered something none of us could hear. She wasn't waving at us. She wasn't asking for help. She simply stood there, pointing toward the forest. Noah slowly eased his foot off the accelerator. What is she doing? Nobody answered. As we got closer, she took 2 slow steps toward the passenger side. I rolled the window down just a few inches. Are you okay? She looked directly at me. Her eyes were red, not from crying. From exhaustion. She spoke so quietly I almost didn't hear her. Whatever happens, don't stop for the man ahead. I frowned. What man? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked past our SUV toward the road behind us. Then she whispered, "Go." Noah didn't wait. He pressed the accelerator. When I looked back through the side mirror, she was still standing there, exactly where we'd left her, not waving, not moving, just watching us disappear into the darkness. Nobody spoke for almost 5 minutes. The silence inside the SUV felt heavier than the night outside. Finally, Tyler laughed. Okay, that was definitely staged. A prank or something. Chloe shook her head. If it was a prank, where were the cameras? Nobody had an answer. Then Mason leaned forward. Guys, look ahead. About half a mile away, someone was standing in the middle of the highway. A man. He was waving both arms desperately, like he needed help. His clothes were dirty. One sleeve looked torn. As we got closer, he started shouting. We couldn't hear the words, but we could see the panic on his face. Tyler immediately said, "We have to stop." I looked at Noah. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. Then, almost at the same time, every one of us remembered the woman's warning, "Don't stop for the man ahead." Noah drove around him. The man slammed both fists onto the hood as we passed. Then, he started running. At first, it looked normal. Then he sped up far too quickly. He kept pace with the SUV, 40, then 50 miles per hour. His face never changed. He wasn't screaming anymore. He was smiling, a wide, unnatural smile. Chloe started crying. Tyler turned around in his seat. He's still behind us. Noah pushed the SUV even faster. 65, 70. The engine screamed. After nearly 30 seconds, the man suddenly stopped, not slowed down, stopped. He stood in the middle of the highway, watching our taillights disappear. Nearly 20 minutes later, the road finally led into a small town. Every one of us wanted to find the nearest police station. It didn't take long. The night duty officer listened without interrupting. When we finished, he asked only one question. The woman. Were her feet bare? Noah slowly nodded. The officer looked down at his desk, then quietly called someone. 10 minutes later, an older detective arrived, gray hair, coffee in one hand, case files in the other. He placed several faded newspaper clippings on the table. The oldest was almost 40 years old. Every headline described a disappearance along Route 16. Different years, different victims, same highway. Then he showed us something stranger, photographs, not of the missing people, of survivors. Every survivor had reported seeing a young woman in a white dress. Always before someone else appeared asking for help, the detective leaned back. We've never identified her, but everyone who ignored her warning never came home. Tyler swallowed hard. So, she saved us. The detective slowly shook his head. I don't know. What I do know is that highway has taken 23 people, and every survivor tells the same story. He paused. Almost. What do you mean? They never agree on who was standing in the road. Some describe a man, others describe an elderly woman, a little girl, a police officer, but they all remember the same young woman. 3 days later, the detective called us back. They'd reviewed every highway camera, every traffic camera, every gas station camera. He played the footage. Our SUV entered Route 16 exactly as we remembered. Minutes later, the man appeared. He ran after our vehicle just like we described. The truck that passed us later, it was there too. Then the detective froze the video. This, he said quietly, is where you told us you stopped. The screen showed our SUV parked on the shoulder, 5 of us inside, no one outside. The passenger window rolled down, as if someone was standing there. I watched myself speaking, nodding, listening, but there was nobody beside the SUV. The empty road stretched for miles. The detective replayed it. Again and again, nothing, no woman, no footprints, no shadow, just us, talking to empty air. No one in the room spoke. Finally, the detective turned off the monitor. I've investigated this highway for 15 years. I still don't know who she is, but if I were you, I'd be grateful you listened. And none of us ever drove Route 16 again. Within a year, the highway was officially closed after a series of landslides. Most people assumed that was the end of the story. It wasn't. About 6 months later, an unmarked envelope arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside was an old photograph. The picture had been taken sometime in the early 1980s. It showed a family standing beside a broken-down station wagon on Route 16. They were smiling, completely unaware of the camera. Standing behind them, near the edge of the trees, was the same young woman. The same white dress, the same exhausted eyes. She looked exactly as she had the night we saw her. She hadn't aged a single day. There was nothing else inside the envelope, no letter, no explanation. I've shown that photograph to the detective. He'd never seen it before. No one knows who mailed it, and to this day, nobody has been able to identify the woman who warned us. Maybe she was just another traveler. Maybe she never existed at all. All I know is this: if we'd stopped for the man, I don't think any of us would have made it home. That was the end of this story. If you've ever experienced something you still can't explain, or have a strange story of your own, send it to Tales of the Dark. Your story could become the next nightmare featured on this channel. If you are new here, subscribe to Tales of the Dark, where every story gives you a nightmare.